addition to missing seeing you guys every day, one of the biggest things that I have been missing is doing a read aloud. And so I had a pile of books at home that I have had for a couple months now, and wanted to read one to you guys. I've never actually done it as a read aloud before, but it is a really good book. It's called Nuts to You by Lynne Perkins, and this book is a lot about friendship and the adventure that these squirrels go on. This book is a little different, so it is in the point of view of from squirrels. There's a lot of chapters, but one of the other things that's different about this book is it's a chapter book. It's really thick. You know that I love reading big books, not as big as Candy Makers, but this book has a lot of fantastic illustrations that I'll be able to show you. I'm going to attempt to read it and hold it up so you can see it like I normally do when there's a read aloud with illustrations in it. The other really cool thing about this book is that there are a lot of footnotes. There's literally an illustration on every page, which is really cool. So hopefully you can see them. The other thing is that there's these footnotes. So you'll see in the text, where is it? So there's this little asterisk here, the little star, and it usually comes after something. And then what you'll see is at the bottom of the page, you'll see it again, and then it explains what that means. So why they have the asterisk there is just to tell you a tidbit of information. And this author, her footnotes tend to be very funny. So I'm interested to see what you think of them. I'll point them out when I read them because it might throw off the story a little bit. So I figured that you could come on, you could listen to me read, you could see my face, and you could listen to this great book. So you don't have to do anything else other than listen to it. Tell me what you think. So I'd love to hear back if you write me emails, what you thought of the chapter or what you think of the book so far. All right, so there are a lot of chapters. It starts out with an author's note. There are 23 chapters, and there's a bunch of ending stuff. So it starts with the author's note. Here, this one doesn't have any illustrations, so I'm just going to read the author's note until we get to the first chapter, because then there's a picture on the first chapter, on the first page. So the author's note. One mild day in early November, I took my lunch down to the water wheel park. I had been scribbling away on a project, so it was mid-afternoon by the time I got there. As I sat down on the bench, a few kids wandered through the park on their way home from school. They stopped to drop sticks into the stream above the water wheel, then ran around to watch them fly off on the other side. I waved to Rose, who was walking someone's dog down the alley below the park. A couple of high school boys pulled up in a car and headed for the tennis court. Soon I heard the pock-pock of the tennis ball, intercepted with shouts of the score. Some birds were excited about the wild grapes hanging in thick clusters from their vines, which were supported by a different kind of bush that had tiny red berries that I would certainly not eat without finding out first what they were. They didn't look that tasty anyway. But they were pretty. Squirrels raced to and fro, the ways squirrels do. I was watching the carefree squirrels when, all at once, one of them jumped onto the end of the bench where I was sitting, and looked with interest at me, and then, meaningfully, at my sandwich. Quite calmly, he stepped closer. That's bold, I thought. A little too bold. I tore off a bit of my sandwich and was about to chuck it as far as I could, figuring he would take off after it, when he spoke. Please don't throw it, he said. Would you mind just setting it on the bench? I'm not as spry as I once was. While I was gathering my wits, he sniffed the air and spoke again. It's peanut butter, isn't it? I nodded. I didn't speak. I have not reached the point of talking to squirrels. I thought to myself, not yet, but I did set the piece of sandwich down on the bench between us. The squirrel took it up and nibbled. He closed his eyes as if savoring the taste. I love this stuff, he said. I love the taste of it, and the chunks. I'm glad it's the chunky kind. You speak, I said. Human English? Are you sure you're not speaking squirrel? He asked. Straight face, deadpan, and then he laughed. Yes, he said. Yes, I do. I'm an old squirrel, and I have lived for many years in the vicinity of humans. We have shared homes. One picks things up, habits, language. He took another nibble. What I love most about peanut butter, he said, is how it transports me to my youth. The first taste always takes me back to the very first time I had it. For an instant, I am young again, and strong, and probably foolish. He bit, he chewed, and swallowed. It was just after a great adventure, he said, that made it taste even better. It always does, don't you find? Oh, yes, I said, always. I tried to think whether I'd ever had a great adventure. I decided that I had. It's all in how you look at it. I took a bite of my sandwich and tore off another piece for the squirrel. Still working on the first bit, he nodded his thanks. It was just this time of year, too, he said. He seemed to want to talk about it. I glanced around the park. Everyone had gone. No kids, no dogs or dog walkers, no high school boys playing tennis, no birds, no squirrels, except this one. So what happened? I asked. What was your great adventure? He cleared his throat. Amid the thick and intertwining boughs, among the limbs, branches, and leafy twigs of our grove, he began. The buzz paths ran. He said this as if he had said it many times before. He spoke formally, almost as if he were reciting a poem. Actually, he said then, in his normal voice, and then there's a little footnote here with after his normal voice. So she says, the fact that I'm referring to his normal voice when talking about a squirrel should tell you something. But what can I say? It happened. So he says, I think I'll start with the wolf this time. So that's the author's note. So her experience sitting in the park with these squirrels. So chapter 1 starts here. And it's called The Squirrel Who Cried Wolf. So you see this picture here. There's a squirrel thinking about a wolf. And then there's a little dialogue down here. It says, everything is relative. And to a wolf's relatives, he or she is super nice. So that says, there's these little captions that says, best wolf ever, noble, thoughtful, brave, beautiful, such beautiful eyes, adorbs, really good at catching squirrels. Hey, wait a minute. So that's the first illustration we have. So it says, it's true that there was a wolf, or wolves. There may have been more than one. Maybe they were actually coyotes. Who knows? They all look pretty much the same to a squirrel. Huge, shaggy, terrible yellow eyes, red flowery mouth with big, sharp, pointy teeth. And it's true that if you are a squirrel on the ground and a wolf or a coyote strolls into the neighborhood, running up a tree is the best plan. No one's going to argue that. The problem was the squirrel called Jip. He kept yelling, wolf, just to see everyone run. He had been doing it all day. He thought it was funny, and a little bit it made him feel important, because most of the time no one listened or paid any attention to him. But when he shouted wolf up in the trees, they all went. Except for Jed. Jip looked at him, annoyed. Wolf, he shouted again, but Jed stayed put. He was busy. He had nuts to bury. Winter was coming. The first frost was long gone, and the air felt cooler with each passing day. Leaves were falling into crisp yellow piles on the ground. Any day now, there would be snow. Just a little at first, then mountains of it. So we have Jed there collecting his nuts for before winter. Wolf, 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 Jed said irritably. Is that the only word he knows? Jed did look around to see if there was a wolf, because he was irritated, but you just never know. Sure enough, no wolf in sight. He shook his head and went back to his work, muttering and nattering. Wolf! Shrieked Jip. Wolf, 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 Jed muttered. There is no wolf. And then the foolish Jip saw something. not a wolf, but something very real, something dangerous. In his fright, he blurted out the first word that popped into his head, the one that he had been saying all day. Wolf? Muttering and digging, Jed did not notice until the very last instant how the air above him had gone suddenly still and silent. Oh, he said in surprise as a set of talons tightened around him and lifted him up, 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 past every whirl of branches, up above the treetops into the vast reaches of sky. Cold air rushed over his face, forced his eyes to squeeze shut. Every muscle in his body tensed up. He may have peed a little bit. Who wouldn't? All four of his paws curled and clenched. His mind raced. A mighty wave of fear rolled in and filled him up. And somehow, even through the roaring of the fear and the rushing of the air, he could hear a small voice inside him saying, "This is it, then." So there he is. Oh, claws coming. Jip watched the fearsome bird swoop down, snatch his cousin Jed, and swoop back up. "Hawk," he said, correcting himself. I should have cried hawk. So he had to do it now. Hawk, he cried. Hawk, hawk. So that's the end of chapter 1.